A top military official was on Capitol Hill today to answer questions about that controversial second strike on an alleged drug trafficking boat in the Caribbean in September. Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley told leaders of the House and Senate Armed Services and Intelligence Committees that he ordered that strike after it was determined 2 survivors from the initial attack were trying to climb back onto the boat and retrieve what a source describes as illegal narcotics. The operation has several lawmakers demanding more information, calling it a potential war crime and asking for more on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's role in it. CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion is on Capitol Hill with more. Nikole, what are lawmakers telling you?
Well, some are talking, others aren't, but those that are have shared some details about this briefing, particularly some of the video that was shown to several members of Congress with respect to this strike, particularly that second strike in question after there were a pair of survivors seen clinging to a boat. But the accounts of what happened next appear to differ. Take a listen to what 2 members of Congress shared with reporters a short time ago.
But what I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service. You have 2 individuals in clear distress without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who were killed by the United States.
I saw 2 survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs down for the United States, back over, so they could stay in the fight.
So again, the accounts there differ a little bit depending on who you talk to. We did hear from some other members who didn't necessarily want to go into detail, specifically Senate Armed Services Chair Roger Wicker, who told me that he does believe that members of the House and Senate, there could be others who would like to get briefed on this when I asked him if he thought that there would be additional hearings that would take place following these briefings. So again, this investigation, both by the House Armed Services and Senate Armed Services Committee, continues. And in some cases, according to members, in light of this briefing, is just now getting underway.
And President Trump is standing by Secretary Pete Hegseth. What about Congress?
Well, look, I mean, you have some lawmakers, particularly many Democrats, who are calling for the secretary's resignation. But in some cases, these aren't necessarily new calls, as many of them have been calling for his resignation for some time. Others defending their vote against his confirmation at the beginning of this Congress. But look, some of this is related to this incident involving the boat strikes. For others, it has to deal with this Signalgate report that was just released by the Department of Defense or Department of War's Inspector General, which found that some military information could have been jeopardized by the secretary's participation in that signal group chat earlier this year regarding some airstrikes in Yemen. So that being said, there are a number of reasons why some lawmakers, again, mostly Democrats, would like to see the secretary go. But for the most part, Republicans appear to be standing by the secretary. Leader John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, said earlier today that he continues to serve at the pleasure of the president.
Nikole Killion, thank you.
Can you tell us what are your impressions?
Let me just say this. Admiral Bradley and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff did the right thing. And Admiral Bradley defended the decisions taken, and Admiral Bradley has a storied career, and he has my respect, and he should have the respect of all of us. But what I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service. You have 2 individuals in clear distress without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who were killed by the United States.
Can you tell us a little bit more about exactly what was so troubling? Like, what were some of the things that troubled you?
Under the DoD manual for abiding by the laws of armed conflict, the specific example given of an impermissible action is attacking a shipwreck. Any American who sees the video that I saw will see the United States military attacking shipwrecked sailors. Bad guys, but attacking shipwrecked sailors. Now, there's a whole set of contextual items that the Admiral explained. Yes, they were carrying drugs. They were not in the position to continue their mission in any way. People will someday see this video and they will see that that video shows, if you don't have the broader context, an attack on shipwrecked sailors. That's what, the last thing I'm going to say is that the Admiral confirmed that there had not been a kill them all order, and that there was not an order to grant no quarter.
So does it exonerate Hegseth? Does it exonerate him?
Do you think the video should be released publicly?
I do.
Yeah, I want to thank Admiral Bradley and General Kane for coming to brief about the strikes on September 2nd, which were righteous strikes. These are narco-terrorists who are trafficking drugs that are destined for the United States to kill thousands of Arkansans and millions of Americans. The first strike, the second strike, and the third and the fourth strike on September 2nd were entirely lawful and needful, and they were exactly what we would expect our military commanders to do.
What exactly did you see in terms of the video of the second strike? Were there survivors?
I saw two survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs down for the United States, back over so they could stay in the fight. And potentially, given all the context we heard, of other narco-terrorist boats in the area coming to their aid to recover their cargo and recover those narco-terrorists. And just like you would blow up a boat off of the Somali coast or the Yemeni coast, and you'd come back and strike it again if it still had terrorists and it still had explosives or missiles, Admiral Bradley and Secretary Hegseth did exactly what we would expect them to do.
Did Congressman Hines said it's one of the most disturbing things he's seen in his career. Did that match
Who
up
did?
with what you, Congressman Hines?
No, I didn't see anything disturbing about it. What's disturbing to me is that millions of Americans have died from drugs being run to America by these cartels. What's gratifying to me is that the president has made the decision, finally, after decades of letting it happen, that we're going to take the battle to them. And we're going to continue to strike these boats until cartels learn their lesson that their drugs are no longer coming to America.
Did a military JAG say that the second and follow-on strikes were all lawful?
Yes, look, this is not like a firefight in some cave in Afghanistan that had 3 people. This was witnessed by literally hundreds of uniformed and civilian personnel at the Pentagon, at Fort Bragg, at other installations. Dozens of them were lawyers. Everybody was watching. Everybody had seen the intelligence and the legal basis leading up to these strikes. Everyone was present during it, and that continues to be the case. There's been no change in the guidance or the order that the Secretary has given to our troopers. And in subsequent strikes, there's an example where survivors actually were shipwrecked and distressed and not trying to continue on their mission. And they were treated, as they should be, as non-combatants. They were picked up by U.S. forces. Just an example of how, of course, our military always obeys the laws of war. Our military also acts within appropriate lawful authority to target these narco-terrorists.
But Congressman Hines also said that according to what he saw in that video, the two who survived trying to get back on the boat, there was no way they could have conducted further operations or anything like that. Do you disagree with?
Jim may disagree with the entire operation. He may be okay with drug boats running to America, or at least thinking that it's an effective tactic to interdict them. I just disagree with that. These are narco-terrorist, foreign designated terrorist organizations who are bringing drugs to our shores that have killed millions of Americans and thousands of Arkansans. If you think these strikes are justified and righteous, as I do, and I want them to continue, then of course the second strike, when you have 2 survivors who are trying to flip their boat back over and continue on their mission, remain in the battle. Unlike a subsequent strike in which there was no such indication, and they were what's called distressed or shipwrecked under the laws of the sea and the law of armed conflict, and our military went out and picked them up.
Is it your expectation that these strikes will continue?
It's my expectation and my deep hope that these strikes will continue.
What about on land? The president has said that strikes could happen on land. Is that something you would support?
if necessary to stop the flow of drugs into the United States and protect our communities and our children, we should take force to these cartels wherever they are authorized.
Should the video be more common as strikes continue?
Say again?
Should briefings become far more common as strikes continue?
Now look, it's not Congress's role to sharpshoot every single tactical decision. This was the first strike, so understandably the Secretary and Admiral Bradley wanted to be involved in it, but subsequent strikes, again, we don't expect admirals and the Secretary of Defense to be approving patrols in Iraq or Afghanistan during the war on terror in those places. They shouldn't be involved in every single decision here, nor should Congress be sitting there sharpshooting and Monday morning quarterbacking.
But yesterday the president told reporters that this is war regarding the actions with Venezuela. So that seems like an escalation that Congress would want to be a part of.
Well, look, they came up here today to brief us because of the lies that were in the Washington Post last Friday to clear the air. I advise the next time to immediately put out what they told us today, because if they had put it out on Friday or Saturday, you wouldn't have the 6 days of controversy. I think you would have had the American people very satisfied that we have such a high degree of professionalism in our military, and the president is taking the battle to these narco-terrorists.
So you believe the whole video should be released in its entirety?
I mean, I'll leave that to the Department of Defense and whether or not there's anything in there they don't want to release. I didn't see anything in there that concerned me. Look, these videos have been made and released for 25 years. Like, you've all seen videos that have been released of drone strikes or helicopter strikes on terrorist groups in Afghanistan or Syria or Iraq or Yemen. There's nothing novel or new here. Just because it happened on water doesn't make any different than happening on land.
So there was no change in protocol or policy from September 2nd through the rest of the strikes?
Nope. General Kane made it clear multiple times under questions from me that the orders have not changed from the first strike to today. So the actions that our military took on September 2nd and the actions they took on a subsequent strike in which there were distressed shipwreck that were deemed non-combatant is happening under the same legal standards and operation order.
Was there a kill-all order from Secretary Hegseth?
No, both. Admiral Bradley was very clear that he was given no such order, not to give no quarter or to kill them all. He was given an order that, of course, was written down in great detail, as our military always does.
But was there a vocal order as well?
There was no vocal order either.
After what you heard today, do you think it's appropriate for Senator Wicker to be launching into a continuous investigation into the second strike?
Well, I mean, I think what we saw today and what Senator Wicker and Senator Reid on the Armed Services Committee saw today is a very thorough inquiry into exactly what happened. I can't say what's going to happen on the committee in the future, but I think what happened today with General Kane and Admiral Bradley coming up and showing us the videos, kind of talking through everything that led up to September 2nd, is a very thorough review of what's happened.
No more information is needed from the table.
I don't personally need any more information, no.
Senator, how far apart were those strikes on September 2nd?
I mean, they're several minutes apart. You had obscurance, both the smoke from the first strike and then cloud cover as well. I couldn't tell you exactly how long.
But minutes,
they weren't.
Minute.
I think minutes. Yeah.
Minutes, not hours.
Senator,
I don't think so.
Senator, you said that the strikes were righteous, that there were 4 of them. Would you have taken the same shot if you were in that position?
If I was Admiral Bradley and I'd been delegated that authority, absolutely. And I'd do it again.
Was there more than 4 shots?
Based on the briefings,
No, there's 4.
based on the briefings you've received, do you agree with the president that we are at war in these engagements?
These drug cartels have been waging war against the American people for decades, and we are finally simply joining it.
We are.
All right, I got to go vote.
Should there
y'all.
be an AUMF?
Was the vote?
Senator Cotton came out here and he called these righteous strikes. He said that they were acting lawfully here, and he was perfectly comfortable with it. Did you come away with that same impression?
I think it'd be hard to watch the series of videos and not be troubled by it. So I don't reach the same conclusion that Senator Cotton does if you're describing it as righteous.
He said that.
But I have more policy questions than ever about the framing of the mission, the rules of engagement. I'm not going to get into the details, but there were some things that I was briefed on that are reassuring about process, about intelligence, about the role of the JAGs. But more broadly, what we are asking the men and women of our armed forces, and in particularly special forces, to do, I think still lacks clear justification. That's not specific to this operation or this strike. That's the entire undertaking. Exactly how narcotics being trafficked in the Eastern Caribbean on the open ocean connect to harming the United States at a level that justifies lethal strikes repeatedly, I have not yet been persuaded of. Given that we do interdiction in the open ocean with Coast Guard and DEA officers, agents, over and over and over, why these particular boats in this particular region ought to be struck by missiles and ought to be tweeted out by the Secretary rather than interdicted by the Coast Guard and then the crew interrogated for better information about the operations of narcotics traffickers. These incidents are happening a long way from the United States in the open ocean in the Eastern Caribbean. I am not questioning how our armed forces are carrying out their orders. I'm questioning why the administration is engaging in this campaign and whether this is justified and the best use of these remarkable capabilities of the Navy and our special forces.
What Senator Cotton said is that he said that from the video that he saw, that these survivors went back into the boat, but were trying to move ahead with their efforts to traffic drugs or provide information to other, who he said were narco-terrorists, and that's why it made sense to strike this boat again. Did you come away with that same impression?
I did not.
How did you guys come up with such different conclusions?
I don't know.
But why did you come up with your own impression on this?
Well, you're now asking me to respond to a characterization by Senator Cotton that I didn't hear?
Explain your impression of what happened with those two survivors.
In a second strike, they were killed, and in a third and fourth strike, the boat was sunk. But I'm not going to get into a lot more of the details around that because I don't think that's appropriate given this was in a classified setting. There's been lots of public reporting about this, and I'm trying to make it less inaccurate, not more inaccurate. The underlying judgment that frames this entire operation is that if there is a boat with narcotics and people who are affiliated with a narcotics trafficking organization, that's a legitimate target. I've still got questions about that.
Would you want to hear from Admiral Brennan about HEXA's leadership and just the administration's move with the Department of War?
Yes.
He retires next week. Is that something you would be pushing for, like an open testimony from him?
I had sent a letter on behalf, I'd asked for briefings on these matters for some time. Look, I appreciate that we had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the JSOC commander, later SOCOM commander, the Admiral with us today. But this campaign's been going on for months. There have been dozens of strikes. There have been, I think, nearly 80 people killed now. I think it deserved a fuller and more clear briefing and legal justification well before this moment.
Was Secretary Hegseth responsible for this strike?
Secretary Hegseth is responsible for all of these strikes because he's responsible for the campaign and for the rules of engagement and for how it's being carried out.
Senator Cotton said he expects these strikes to continue. Do you think there will be more briefings with these?
There should be. There has to be more and better briefing about why this is the right thing for us to be doing, because if the President of the United States pardons the former President of Honduras, who was convicted by an American court of trafficking hundreds of tons of cocaine, not in general, but specifically to the United States, if President Trump can pardon a convicted narco-terrorist trafficker, how does this campaign where we are targeting and killing folks on the open ocean to prevent their trafficking of drugs anywhere, how is that legitimate? That's a policy question. That is not a question rooted in the operation of our armed forces. That's about the larger judgment, which the Secretary and President are responsible for.
I'm sorry if you've already answered this, but can you say anything about whether the original orders that were given by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, it sounds as if he did not order to kill everyone on board?
I'm waiting for some follow-up from this briefing, but that's certainly what was presented.
And then we also heard from Senator Cotton that the boat was flipped over and the survivors were trying to flip it back right side. Is that your understanding?
That's a fair characterization.
Was the strike after the survivors had climbed back in the boat? Or did they ever climb back in the boat? feels unclassified to me.
I'm trying to avoid making something unclassified that's currently classified, to the best of my understanding. Senator Cotton and I came out with different understandings of what we saw.
And then
Do you
one more thing,
understand-
was there
do you
a jag
understand
in
why-
the room making the,
Yes.
telling them?
Do you understand why Secretary Hicks had said that he was not there watching the second strike happen when it was carried out?
I don't understand why,
Did
other than he's busy.
Did Admiral Bradley talk about that at all?
About why he was no
Secretary
longer
Hicks was involved?
No, that was not addressed. And I thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Let me start by saying, to echo what others have said, the video was very disturbing. And I think Congress needs to see it. I think as well that the legal opinion underlying this whole policy actions, frankly, needs to be released publicly. I have additional questions and additional documentation of how this process arose that I want to see. And obviously I think the Admiral and the General will be asked to testify at least before relevant committees like SASC and the Intelligence Committee. And why don't I stop there and take a couple of questions?
Senator Warner, Senator Cotton said that this was a lawful attack that was carried out. In your view, and from seeing the videos here, was this a lawful attack?
I think the video was very disturbing. I am not going to weigh in on all of the questions about lawful morality, judgments, until I get all the information. I mean, some of the accusations that have been made, whether this kind of action constituted a war crime, I can't think of a more serious accusation that could be made. And anyone, and I'm just saying, for this senator, I'm not going to make a judgment on that until I have all the information. Otherwise would be what I think would be not doing my duty. And I do continue to have concerns that this pattern from Secretary Hegseth of putting our uniformed military in harm's way or under duress, as we saw from the Inspector General report, or how there seems to be a number of variations of this story of how the facts rolled out, how the reluctance to share with Congress for a strike that took place on September 2nd until December, the unedited video. I can at least comment on those actions. I think it doesn't do the Secretary or our armed forces any service by holding back and not being transparent. We all know that our country's record of interventions in the Caribbean, in Central America and South America over the last 100+ years hasn't been a perfect record. And so as we think about these actions against these drug traffickers, and they are threats, but the characterizations that have been made, we have to do that in a thoughtful way. And then as we still think about this enormous flotilla we've got off the coast of Venezuela, when we still have not got any articulation of what the plan or policy is, doesn't do those men and women who are potentially in harm's way, doesn't treat them with, I think, the appropriate transparency and directness they deserve.
Did Admiral Bradley, the two men that were in the water, based on what you saw, do you feel like they became an offensive threat to military?
Again, I am not going to I'm going to say what the video was very troubling, and I think more people need to see it. But I want to better understand process, justification, and some of the items. I had a checklist of items that I want to see that I think many of my colleagues have asked for as well.
Did Admiral Bradley specifically order the follow-on strikes at the order of Secretary Hegseth? Was it Secretary Hegseth's orders why he actually ordered those follow-on strikes?
I think that is a question that I want to still get some further clarification on.
What were the original orders?
And again, I'm not going to, I think I've been as clear as I'm going to be. I'm going to, in terms of judgments, I'm going to reserve making judgments, particularly when we're talking about something that is so extraordinarily serious, not only in terms of Secretary Hegseth and Admiral Bradley, but candidly in terms of the United States Armed Forces. I'm not going to jump to some conclusion. I wish this could have, this eventual transparency could and should have happened much earlier, but we are where we are today. And
can you talk about one part?
Was Secretary Hegseth responsible ultimately here?
Again, these are the kind of questions that still need to be answered. And again, we've got lots of attribution in the press about who said what, when, and where, and I want to get the answers to that.
Can you talk about what the video actually showed, though?
Need to hear from Pete Hegseth on this issue?